Dad, a great teacher. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
I love these little details.
Yeah, he's a wise old owl. Dad.
Right, yeah, because and was he living in Sydney at the time?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I was still at home.
But he sort of allowed you to work in the bottle shop and and do it must have been eating at him a bit.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
Probably, but
It's good that
he would
it.
never force his views upon me, but it just sort of got to a point where it was just a gentle cajoling. It was like, mate, come on. There's going to come a point in time where you're going to look around and you're going to realise that you're a long way behind the pack here. And, your mates are going to start getting proper jobs and doing proper stuff, and you're just going to be, knocking the tops off.
Yeah, well, that happened
Half
to me
bottles
with
of
music.
Stickies. Did it?
When I first moved to Sydney in a band, after 3 years, I started to go, there's only a few rich musicians that you'd see.
Funnily enough.
But yeah, well, this was at the end of the big money, the Angels era and all that sort of stuff where people had money. You could clearly see they're living in the big house. But the same thing happened to me. I started to look back at everyone in Brisbane going, they're starting to buy houses. My mates from high school. I'm living this dream and, pretending to be a dirtbag even to live the dream. But meanwhile, guys are starting to think about jet skis. And,
and stuff.
Yeah.
So it sort of got to the point where what was I going to do? And there was a way, I don't even know if it still exists, but you could, I never had the marks out of school to go to university and study a law degree. I wouldn't have come close. I did go to uni. I started an arts degree and lasted about 2 weeks. It was just like being in school. And I went, this is silly. And I went and travelled around the country for a while. But it came to this point. There was a way you could do a part-time law degree through a thing called the Solicitors Admission Board, and it meant that you could work and you could study at night, go to classes at night, and so I became got on the part-time study treadmill, worked in law firms, and after 6 or 7 years of ups and downs and a big bloody bun rush at the end just to get the damn thing over and done with, I got my bit of paper and got admitted, and I was a solicitor.
Unreal. That interests me. I really missed the boat on that one. I always had this, I didn't go to, once I moved back to the Gold Coast in 98, 99, it was my girlfriend at the time who was a radio announcer, actually, by the way, or became a radio announcer, but she was going to Griffith Uni. She was doing her journalism degree there.
Yeah.
It was the first time I actually went into, I couldn't believe the party it was. Like, I think, and I've always said, there's even a bar here. No one told me that.
More than one instances, yes.
That's a funny thing about it.
It's big enough to have bad bars and good bars at university, But I missed all that because I was a nighttime student. It was night school, essentially.
Right.
So it was just a grind to get through it, and it took me ages, and I'd fail things, and it was a pain in the arse, totally and utterly a pain in the arse, the whole experience, but it was well worth doing because it opens doors. I mean, I never liked being a solicitor. I hated it. Just bounced from job to job. Right. And looking for that kind of existence that would satisfy me in some way, shape or form. And it was never there. Like I went from working in a little firm to working in a big firm to working in, a niche little boutique firm that did building and construction stuff. And there were moments, and then I wound up in a general practice working for a bloke who, I better not say anything, but it was hard. It was hard yak. And I just thought, you know what? This isn't making me happy. And bless her, my beautiful wife just said, mate, you're never going to be happy doing this. You want to write. Like I'd always written. And you want to write, let's just call you a writer and hang out your shingle and give it away. So literally just before we got married, I was a poor prospect as a husband because I didn't have a job. I went into our wedding celebration. We got married down at Byron, but I went into the couple of weeks of our wedding celebration and our honeymoon without a job. I had no job to go to when the party ended. So but it was a wonderful thing to do, just to have that ability to stop and go. Right, I'll figure it out now. I can stop and start again doing something completely new, and I did, which was great.
Oh, that's great. But even. See, for me, looking you up on the net, okay, you're on the radio on Drive.
Yeah, 91.7 ABC Gold Coast. I can advertise that.
I'll tell you what, you've brought me back to the radio.
Oh, great.
Yeah, you've got this voice, mate. And I sort of, not ribbing you is not the right word, but I remember when I first met you, and then it was at Iron Resin, where I meet everyone nowadays.
Yeah.
And then you spoke to me on the phone when you filmed the Goose and the Goat.
Yeah. Your goose and your
my
goat.
goose and my goat having a fight, which went pretty viral. It was great. But I remember actually listening to your voice, going, "Wow, there's a voice. You know, you've got the voice clearly,
well,
it resonates."
To me, that sounds entirely bizarre because if you gave me a list, if you asked me when I left school to write out a list of 1,000 jobs, 2,000 jobs, and I would sit there diligently and write them all down. You know, I could have been a bricklayer, I could have been a builder, I could have been whatever it was. Yeah. A life as a radio presenter wouldn't have even crossed my radar. I wouldn't have known where to begin. I had no interest in it. It's funny how it happens. And I literally tripped into this. So I don't have anything like a traditional radio background. I haven't. I fell into it.
Which is probably what makes you good, though. That's what I was sort of getting at with my point, is that you were a solicitor. It makes me feel
a bit lost sometimes because, to be honest, it
until you meet a full-time radio guy and go, "Oh, what a douche." You know.
Struggling. But I think it helps sometimes approaching a job like that, coming from a slightly skew-if background. I think... Because I think people who've been in it a long time there's a bit of a sameness to what they do. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. There's a system that they apply in the way they approach their work, and they've got some skills that I just don't have, and I probably never will. That precision and timing and that kind of thing, the craft of it. I've got to learn all that on the fly. But I'm generally a curious person, and I like to think the best of people, and I think if you apply those sorts of things to what I do, that's probably why I sit in there now and think, hey, this is a pretty decent bloody job. I love this. Every day is good. It's got its frustrations, like every job, but it's a brilliant privilege to do what I do.
When I looked you up, I was expecting that this was potentially your, potentially you'd been in all my point of view about you. By hearing your voice only and the way you ran your drive show, it was like, here's an expert. And I felt like you maybe weren't from the coast. I just felt that way. And this was, your slowing down job or something. Like you'd already been on Sydney Breakfast. I'm legit. Well, I'm legit because I'm a real listener. I love to listen. I love voices, and probably because of my ex-girlfriend from 15 years ago.
She's still in radio?
Yes. I don't know. She's blocked me on... No.
Didn't end well?
She went all around radio. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Quite well known too, but...
So to speak.
Yeah, but I better not. Being in half-assed musician, going radio and studios, and I still do radio ads for my old man's company. Yeah. So I'm always up at 4BC. So therefore, I'm listening to the people who come out of the radio, and I judge them by nature, as other radio people would do. Yeah. So it made me feel great that this is your first radio gig. Yeah. Because there's another guy that was on 4BC back in the day called Michael Smith. Yes. He was the boss of Telstra in Indonesia. I got into listening to him for a year. He was the same kind of guy. He had a real life background. Yeah, right.
It must help.
But
it must help.
Well, you can. It endears to someone like you because you go, oh, he would know, because he was a solicitor. He's dealt with every single part of the community.
You sort of got to remove judgmentalism out of it. You can't. People are inherently good. If you approach life, people are inherently good. You can't really go wrong, to be honest, when you're dealing with people, talking to people day in, day out. And I don't know, I've never really tried to define that, but I reckon that's probably a way to approach it. But, mate, the way I fell into radio is freaky. Do you want to know how it happened? Well, like I said, I got married and I had no job. I was going to write. And so I started doing some ad copywriting and general writing stuff, a bit of legal writing and basically just farming out invoices for whatever people would pay me to write. And kept doing that for a while. We moved to the Gold Coast and Sam, wife, bumped into the fella who was the CEO of the Gold Coast Suns on a plane one day. Got talking, what do you do? What's your husband do? Oh, he's a writer. Oh, we might have a need for someone like that. Give us your details. So I got a call months later from the bloke who was looking after media and communications for the Gold Coast Suns in the year before they joined the AFL. And it was just like, come in for 2 or 3 weeks. We just need some content for our website, a few player profiles, that sort of thing. And then I got there and, as often happens, you get there and you stay there. And I was there for 3 days a week for that whole year, doing a range of things, a bit of media stuff, writing stuff for them, helping out here and there. And I loved it. It was great, with an interest in sport and all that kind of thing, and seeing it up close, these young kids coming in and, trying to make a go of it.
Yeah.
There was stories, it was rich in stories. It was fabulous. Great organisation, the Suns. And anyway, I got to the end of the year and I thought, you know what, they're about to join the big league. There's a book in this. I could write a book about this. And so I pitched it to the Suns and they were like, yeah, go for it, go and formulate an idea, put together a plan, and so I did. And I don't really think they appreciated that I had a few connections in publishing through other stuff that I'd written in the past. And there was a heap of interest because, Gary Ablett was at the club and people are curious about him. And, it's a great story, this new frontier of sport where you just literally create a side and put it somewhere. It was no historical... There was no historical touchstone. It wasn't Collingwood, or it wasn't, it didn't have a story like Carlton or St Kilda or whoever else. It was just this brand new thing that had just been made. And it was kind of strange and modern and exciting. So there was a story in it. And I was going to approach it from doing, taking it from the perspective each week, the trainers, the coach, sit in with them for a week for the first season and tell the story of each game through their eyes, which I thought was a pretty strong concept. And publishers loved it. And there was within days, there were several publishers who were interested in the concept. And I went back to old Travis Auld, who's no longer with the club, but he was the CEO at the time. And I said, look, there's actually a fair bit of interest in this. We're going to have to figure out some way of doing this, whether you pay me to do it as a lump sum or I get paid by the week or by the hour or how we structure it. And he was like, I'll put it to the board. And he put it to the board and came back and said, no, not interested in it unless we can have the power to edit what it is that you do at the end of it. And I was like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose. And so I said, I'm not going to do that. It was sort of a mutual parting. It was
already written.
No, it hadn't been written. Okay. It was beforehand. So anyway, they wanted the power to control it. Brand new. AFL's a big machine, and they're very brand conscious and all that kind of thing. And although it sort of aggravated me at the time, I kind of understood that's the modern way. So that was that. But very grateful to. I can throw in another brand name here. Random House at the time. They're now part of Penguin. They said, doesn't matter. I reckon you can still write the book anyway. And I said that, the Suns and I parted ways. They weren't going to keep me on if I was writing about them. So I sort of did it as an outsider and wrote a book, and it was pretty well received.
Was that a risk? Was that a risk to you though? Because you were still not employed, so to speak.
Yeah, I was a freelancer.
You had this big, brand new. That must have been a massive risk to throw that away.
There's no risk because there was no reward. It was. I was doing it for the love of it. And At that time, I thought, I wanted to be a writer. Right. I was going to write, and that was going to be my life. So to be published by a big publishing house that's a big deal. That's hard to do. So I saw it. There was no money in it. Absolutely bugger all. If you're listening and you want to write books for £1, have another job.
Because, I've heard that. Why is that? You don't get money in sales, or?
Oh well, you think about it. You got to print a book. You've got to market a book. One book out of thousands of books that get released here, there, and everywhere. I mean, by the end of all of that process being done, there's bugger all left for the person who's doing the writing. Right. So you're only a small part of the pie chart, and there's just not a lot of doing it. No, people don't buy books, so as much as they used to either. So it's a shrinking sort of market.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Unless you write about, what's the 50 Shades of Grey sort of stuff.
There's an angle?
Yeah. At footy, I'm sure there is an angle. Anyway, make a note. We'll do that later. Anyway, I'm going a long way around it.
That's good.
I wrote the book that was well received. Then they gave me another book to do after I'd finished that one. And I was getting to the end of that project, which I really only took on because I didn't have anything else to do. It was like the bad boys of footy. I should never have done it. But I did, and I was at the point where